Captain Zethkan stood on the bridge of the massive Imperial warship Dominion's Pride. His blue-scaled hands gripped the metal railing as he watched the stars through the wide viewing window. The ship was huge, nearly 5 miles long, with enough firepower to destroy entire cities. It was the pride of the Galactic Empire, and Zethkan had commanded it for 12 years. The Vextar sector was quiet today. Too quiet. This part of space was supposed to be empty, just darkness and distant stars. No planets worth claiming, no trade routes to protect, no rebels to crush. It was a boring patrol, but the Empire needed to show its strength everywhere, even in the emptiest corners of the galaxy. "Captain," called Sensor Officer Vixtal from her station. Her voice carried a note of confusion that made Zethkan's ears twitch. "I'm detecting something unusual." Zethkan walked over to her station. Vixtal was a good officer, one of the best sensor operators in the fleet. If she said something was unusual, it was worth listening to. "What is it?" he asked, looking at the glowing screens filled with numbers and wave patterns. "There's an energy signature out there, sir, about 2 million kilometers away." Vixtal pointed at a blinking dot on her screen. "It's not matching any ships in our database." "Pirates?" Zethkan asked. "The Outer Rim attracted all kinds of criminals and smugglers." "No, sir, the energy output is strange. Much higher than any pirate ship I've ever seen. Actually higher than most Imperial ships, too." That got Zethkan's attention. The Empire had the most powerful ships in the galaxy. Their technology was thousands of years ahead of most other species. What could possibly outpower an Imperial vessel? "Show me," he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a view of empty space dotted with stars. At first Zethkan saw nothing. Then Vixtal highlighted a tiny speck of light moving slowly between the stars. "There, sir. It's maintaining a steady course at sublight speed. No attempt to hide or run." "How big is it?" Zethkan asked. Vixtal checked her readings again. "That's the strange part, sir. The ship appears to be much smaller than ours, maybe 1/5 the size. But the power readings..." She shook her head. "It's putting out energy like a small star." Zethkan frowned. This made no sense. Small ships couldn't generate that kind of power. The Empire's own scientists had proven that bigger ships were needed for bigger engines, bigger weapons, bigger shields. It was simple physics. "Could your sensors be malfunctioning?" he asked. "I ran 3 full diagnostics, sir. Everything is working perfectly." Communications Officer Jexhai suddenly looked up from his station. "Captain, I'm picking up transmissions from that ship." "What kind of transmissions?" Zethkan demanded. "That's just it, sir. They're not military codes or distress signals. It sounds like music and voices talking in a language I don't recognize." "Let me hear it." Jexhai pressed a button, and strange sounds filled the bridge. There was indeed music, but it was unlike anything Zethkan had heard before. The rhythms were complex, the melodies both beautiful and alien. Between the music he could hear voices speaking in an unknown language. The voices sounded relaxed, almost cheerful. "Are they trying to contact us?" Zethkan asked. "No, sir. These appear to be internal communications. We're just picking them up because they're not using proper signal shielding." Zethkan found this even more disturbing. What kind of military vessel broadcast its internal communications to anyone who cared to listen? Either this was a trap or these beings were incredibly careless. Neither option made him feel comfortable. "Take us closer," he ordered, "but keep our weapons ready and shields up." The Dominion's Pride moved through space like a metal mountain, its engines glowing blue in the darkness. As they got closer to the mysterious ship, more details became clear on their screens. The alien vessel was indeed much smaller than the Imperial ship, but it was beautiful in a way that surprised Zethkan. Most ships in the galaxy were built for function over form, gray metal boxes bristling with weapons and sensors. This ship looked almost elegant, with smooth curves and a hull that seemed to shimmer in the starlight. "Sir?" Vixtal called out, her voice tight with worry. "I'm getting clearer readings now. That ship, its hull is made of materials I don't recognize, and the energy signature is definitely from some kind of advanced reactor, but the design is completely unknown." "Any weapons?" Zethkan asked. "That's the strangest part, sir. I can't detect any obvious weapon systems. No missile tubes, no energy cannon ports, no torpedo bays. But the ship is radiating so much power that it has to have something." Jexhai suddenly straightened in his chair. "Captain, I'm seeing something on the hull. Markings of some kind." The main screen zoomed in, and Zethkan could see symbols painted on the side of the alien ship. They were in a script he had never seen before, but somehow the ship's computer was able to translate them. Terran Federation vessel Indomitable, the computer announced in its flat mechanical voice. Silence fell over the bridge. Zethkan felt a chill run down his spine. He had been in the Imperial Navy for 30 years, had fought in dozens of battles, across the galaxy, had studied the military capabilities of every known species, but he had never heard of anything called a Terran Federation. Computer, he said slowly, search all databases for information on Terrans or the Terran Federation. A few seconds passed before the computer responded. No records found. This was impossible. The Empire kept detailed files on every spacefaring species in the galaxy. They had to, for military planning and diplomatic purposes. How could an entire Federation exist without the Empire knowing about it? Sir. Navigation Officer Thexpol spoke up from his station. The alien ship is changing course. It's heading directly toward us now. Zethkan watched as the elegant ship turned in space and began moving in their direction. It moved smoothly, almost like it was swimming through space instead of flying. There was something unsettling about how graceful it looked. How fast is it moving? He asked. 0.7 light speed and accelerating, sir. At this rate it will reach us in 43 minutes. Zethkan made a decision. Signal the fleet. I want all ships in this sector to converge on our position, and send a priority message to High Command. Tell them we've encountered an unknown species with advanced technology. Yes, sir, Jexai responded, his fingers dancing over his controls. As the minutes passed, Zethkan found himself staring at the approaching ship on the main screen. It looked so small compared to his massive warship, but something about it made his warrior instincts scream warnings. The power readings, the unknown materials, the complete lack of information about its builders, everything about this situation felt wrong. Captain, Bixtal said quietly, I'm picking up more detailed scans of their ship now that they're closer. Sir, I think you should see this. Zethkan looked at her screen and felt his blood turn cold. The life sign readings showed only 847 beings aboard the alien vessel. His own ship carried a crew of nearly 15,000, and it was considered efficiently manned. How could less than 900 beings operate a ship that was putting out enough energy to power a small moon? Either these Terrans had technology so advanced that it made the Empire look primitive, or this was all an elaborate deception. Both possibilities terrified him. 30 minutes until contact, sir, Thexapol announced. Zethkan straightened his uniform and tried to project confidence he did not feel. Whatever was about to happen, he was an Imperial captain, and he would face it with honor. But deep in his heart, he suspected that this day would change everything. The bridge of the Dominion's Pride was tense as the alien ship approached. Captain Zethkan had ordered all crew to battle stations, but he tried to keep his voice calm when he spoke to his officers. Fear was contagious, and he could not let it spread through his ship. Any word from High Command? He asked Communications Officer Jexai. They acknowledge our message, sir. Admiral Korthvel is reviewing the situation personally. They're sending reinforcements, but the nearest battle group is 6 hours away. 6 hours. Zethkan hoped they would have that long. The alien ship was now close enough to see clearly on the main screen. It was definitely smaller than his warship, but it moved with a confidence that suggested its crew had nothing to fear from the massive Imperial vessel. Sir, Sensor Officer Vixtal called out, the alien ship is slowing down. It's stopping about 50,000 kilometers away from us. Just outside optimal weapons range, Zethkan noted. These Terrans, whoever they were, understood space combat tactics. Are they scanning us? He asked. Yes, sir. But their scans are gentle, almost polite. It's like they're asking permission instead of demanding information. Zethkan had never heard sensors described as polite before, but he understood what Vixtal meant. Most military scans were aggressive, designed to punch through shields and armor to gather intelligence. These scans felt different, more like a careful examination than an invasion. Sir, Jexai said suddenly, they're hailing us. Here it comes, Zethkan thought. Put them through. The main screen flickered, and suddenly, Zethkan was looking at the bridge of the alien ship. It was clean and bright, with soft lighting that seemed almost welcoming. The crew he could see appeared to be bipedal, roughly humanoid but smaller and more delicate-looking than most species he knew. In the center of the screen stood a female, her skin a pale pink color, with strange brown fur growing only on the top of her head. She wore what appeared to be a dark blue uniform with simple decorations. When she spoke, her voice was clear and confident. Imperial vessel, This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation vessel Indomitable. We come in peace, but we will defend ourselves if threatened. Zeth Khan was shocked. The alien was speaking perfect galactic standard, the common language used for diplomatic contact throughout the galaxy. How had they learned it? This is Captain Zeth Khan of the Imperial Warship Dominion's Pride, he replied, trying to match her calm tone. You are in Imperial space. Identify your purpose here. Captain Chen smiled, and somehow that expression made Zeth Khan even more nervous. We're exploring this region of space, Captain. We detected your patrol and thought we should introduce ourselves properly. We wouldn't want any misunderstandings. The Empire has no record of your species or your Federation, Zeth Khan said. Where do you come from? The Outer Rim, beyond, the Spiral Arm. We're relatively new to this part of the galaxy. Chen paused and her expression became more serious. We've been observing galactic civilization for some time, learning about the various powers and their methods of governance. There was something in the way she said methods of governance that made Zeth Khan uncomfortable. It sounded like judgment. I see, he said carefully. And what are your intentions regarding the Empire? That depends entirely on the Empire, Captain. The conversation was interrupted by Science Officer Kexran. Sir, I'm getting impossible readings from their ship. The materials in their hull shouldn't exist according to our understanding of physics. And their power source, it's like they've contained a piece of a star. Zeth Khan muted his communication channel. Are you certain? Yes, sir. Whatever technology they're using, it's far beyond anything in our databases. Zeth Khan reactivated the channel. Captain Chen was waiting patiently, as if she could hear everything that had been said. Your ship is quite impressive, Captain Chen, Zeth Khan said. Perhaps you would be willing to share some technical specifications? I'm afraid that's not possible, Captain. But I can tell you that the Indomitable is designed for exploration and diplomacy, not warfare, exploration and diplomacy, yet it could apparently destroy his ship without effort. Zeth Khan decided to test these Terrans to see how they would react to a show of Imperial power. I'm deploying a fighter escort for your vessel, he announced. Standard procedure for unknown ships in Imperial space. That's not necessary, Captain, but if it makes you more comfortable, we won't object. Zeth Khan signaled to his flight commander, and 12 Imperial fighters launched from the Dominion's Pride. They were the newest model, fast and deadly, each one capable of destroying most civilian ships. They formed up in a standard intimidation pattern around the Terran vessel. For a moment nothing happened. The fighters maintained their positions, weapons armed, but not yet targeting the alien ship. Then, suddenly, something impossible occurred. Sir, called the flight commander over the communication system. All of our targeting computers just went offline. Weapon systems are non-responsive. What? Zeth Khan demanded. Report. We can fly, sir, but we can't lock onto anything or fire our weapons. It's like something just turned off all the combat systems simultaneously. Captain Chen's voice came over the communication channel, still calm and friendly. Captain Zeth Khan, please recall your fighters. Our defensive systems are automated, and I'd rather not have an incident over a misunderstanding. Defensive systems. They had disabled 12 military fighters without firing a shot, without even appearing to do anything. Zeth Khan felt sweat forming on his scales. Recall all fighters immediately, he ordered. As the fighters returned to the Dominion's Pride, their systems came back online as mysteriously as they had been disabled. Whatever the Terrans had done, it was precise, temporary, and completely beyond Imperial understanding. An impressive demonstration, Zeth Khan admitted. We don't like to show off, Captain, but we believe in being clear about capabilities to avoid unfortunate mistakes. Science Officer Kexran was frantically working at his station, trying to understand what had just happened. Sir, I detected no energy discharge, no weapons fire, no jamming signals. Whatever they did to disable our fighters, it didn't register on any of our sensors. Zeth Khan felt a chill of fear. An enemy you couldn't detect was an enemy you couldn't fight. Captain Chen, he said carefully. What exactly is your Federation's policy regarding the Empire? We believe in peace, Captain Zeth Khan. But we also believe in justice. We've been watching this galaxy for some time, learning about its history and its peoples. Some of what we've seen concerns us. Such as slavery, genocide, conquest without cause. The Empire has a complicated reputation. Zeth Khan knew she was right, though he would never admit it openly. The Empire maintained order through strength, and sometimes that strength was used harshly. But it was the way of the galaxy. The strong ruled the weak. The Empire brings order to chaos, he said, reciting the official line. Perhaps, but at what cost? Captain Chen's expression was sad rather than angry. We hoped to find a galactic civilization that had grown beyond such methods. And if you didn't find what you hoped for, then we would have some difficult decisions to make. The threat was delivered so politely that it took Zethkan a moment to recognize it as a threat at all. But the meaning was clear. The Terrans were evaluating the Empire and finding it wanting. Captain, Zethkan said slowly, I think this conversation has moved beyond what a ship's captain should handle. Perhaps you should speak with someone higher in the Imperial command structure. I was hoping you would say that, Captain Chen replied with another smile. We'd be happy to meet with your leadership. In the meantime, we'll remain here. We're in no hurry. The communication ended, leaving Zethkan staring at his own reflection in the dark screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked quietly, but he could feel their fear. They had just encountered something completely outside their understanding of the galaxy. Sir, Jexhai said quietly. High Command is requesting a full report immediately. Zethkan nodded. How could he possibly explain what had just happened? How could he tell Admiral Korthvel that a single alien ship had effortlessly disabled an entire fighter squadron without firing a shot? How could he convey the quiet confidence of Captain Chen or the terrifying implications of her words? Prepare a detailed report, he ordered. Include everything, sensor readings, communication logs, everything. Yes, sir. As his crew worked, Zethkan continued to stare at the Terran ship on his main screen. It looked so peaceful, so harmless. But he now knew that appearances could be deceiving. These Terrans possessed technology that made Imperial warships look like primitive toys, yet they spoke of peace and justice. For the first time in his career, Captain Zethkan wondered if the Empire might have finally met its match. On the capital world of Dominex Prime, Admiral Korthvel stood in the highest tower of Imperial High Command, reading Captain Zethkan's report for the third time. The massive city spread out below him, its billions of inhabitants going about, their daily lives completely unaware that everything might be about to change. The report was detailed and thorough, but it read like a work of science fiction. An unknown species with impossible technology, casually disabling Imperial fighters with invisible weapons, speaking politely about justice and peace while making barely concealed threats. If it had come from any other captain, Korthvel would have dismissed it as fantasy or incompetence. But Zethkan was one of his best commanders, a veteran of dozens of campaigns. The man didn't panic, didn't exaggerate, and had never filed a false report in 30 years of service. If Zethkan said these Terrans were dangerous, then they were dangerous. Computer, Korthvel said aloud, search all historical archives for any reference to humans, Terrans, or the Terran Federation. Searching. The computer replied in its emotionless voice. Search complete. No records found in standard databases. Expand search to include classified archives, sealed historical records, and ancient contact logs. There was a longer pause this time. Partial records found in Archive Section 7, Classification Level 9. Records are fragmentary and marked as unverified contact reports from approximately 500 standard years ago. Korthvel felt his heart skip a beat. Archive Section 7 contained the oldest records in Imperial history, documents so ancient that most historians considered them mythology rather than fact. Display all records. The holographic screen in front of him flickered to life, showing faded documents in the old Imperial script. Most were damaged or incomplete, but one report stood out. It was written by Admiral Hexthor, a legendary figure from the early days of Imperial expansion. Contact Report, Outer Rim Survey Mission, Year 2847. Imperial Standard, during routine exploration of System XK-7339, our survey fleet encountered vessels of unknown configuration. Initial attempts at communication were met with polite responses. In perfect Imperial Standard, the beings identified themselves as human members of something called the Terran Federation. First contact proceeded according to standard protocols, until Combat Commander Vektash decided to test their defenses with a demonstration attack. 3 of our newest destroyers engaged a single human vessel. The battle lasted 47 seconds. All 3 destroyers were disabled, but not destroyed. No human casualties reported. Human commander, identifying herself as Admiral Martinez, expressed regret over the misunderstanding and offered medical aid for our wounded. When questioned about their capabilities, she stated that their ship was a survey vessel, not a warship. Recommend immediate non-aggression pact. Avoid all hostile action. These beings fight like demons but show mercy like angels. Whatever they are not our enemies unless we make them so. Final notation. Never engage humans in combat. File sealed by order of Emperor Thalmec. Information. Restricted to highest command levels only. Korthavel read the report twice more, his blood growing colder with each reading. 500 years ago, the Empire had encountered humans and been so thoroughly outmatched that they had sealed all records of the contact. Now the humans were back, and this time, they seemed less inclined to simply disappear. His communication panel chimed. Sir, Captain Chen of the Terran vessel is requesting a meeting with Imperial leadership. She says she has a diplomatic message. This was unprecedented. In all his years of command, Korthavel had never heard of an alien species requesting direct talks with high command after first contact. Usually there were months of careful diplomatic dancing through intermediaries. Accept the communication. Route it through the secure diplomatic channel. The main screen activated, and Korthavel found himself looking at Captain Chen's bridge. She looked human enough, he supposed, though smaller and more fragile than most species he knew. But after reading Admiral Hexthor's report, he was no longer fooled by appearances. Admiral Korthavel, Captain Chen said with a slight nod of respect. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me. Captain Chen, I understand you have a message for the Empire. I do, though I should mention that I represent not just myself but the Terran Federation Council. What I'm about to tell you has been approved at the highest levels of our government. Korthavel felt a chill. This wasn't just first contact anymore. This was formal diplomacy. We're listening, he said. Captain Chen's expression became serious. Admiral, the Terran Federation has been observing this galaxy for many decades. We've watched your expansion, studied your methods, and learned about your history. We've seen great beauty and terrible ugliness, often within the same species. The Empire has brought order to thousands of worlds, Korthavel said, falling back on official doctrine. Yes, you have. But you've also brought slavery, forced conquest, and genocide. The Zephyrian colonies, for example. Korthavel's blood turned to ice. The Zephyrian incident had been classified at the highest levels. Entire populations had been relocated to make room for Imperial mining operations. How could these humans possibly know about it? I'm not sure what you're referring to, he said carefully. Admiral, please don't insult my intelligence. We know about the slave markets in the Kef Nebula. We know about your plans for the Andorian sector. We know about the relocation camps and the pacification programs. We know because we've been watching, and we've been taking notes. Captain Chen paused, letting her words sink in. We're here to give you one chance to change course. And if we refuse? Korthavel asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. Then we'll be forced to take more direct action to protect the innocent. That sounds like a threat, Captain. It's not a threat, Admiral. It's a promise. But before you make any decisions, perhaps you'd like to see a demonstration of what direct action looks like. Captain Chen provided a set of coordinates in a system 3 sectors away. Send some scouts to those coordinates. Take a look at what you'll find there. The communication ended, leaving Korthavel staring at an empty screen. He immediately dispatched his fastest scouts to the coordinates Chen had provided. 3 hours later, their reports arrived. Sir, the lead scout reported, his voice shaky with disbelief. You're not going to believe what we found out here. Report, Korthavel ordered. It's a debris field, sir. 3 complete pirate fleets all destroyed. We're talking about more than 200 ships, including some of the largest raider vessels ever built. Battle damage? Korthavel asked, though he already suspected the answer. That's the thing, sir. There's no battle damage. The ships weren't shot or blown up. They were disintegrated, turned to atoms. The debris pattern suggests the entire engagement lasted less than a minute. Any sign of human ships in the area? No, sir. Whatever did this was either invisible or operated from extreme range. We found some of the pirate survivors in escape pods. They're all traumatized, but they keep talking about voices from nowhere, demanding they surrender, and then their ships just vanished. Korthavel dismissed the scout and sat alone in his office, trying to process what he'd learned. The humans had somehow destroyed 3 entire pirate fleets without even being detected, and according to Captain Chen, they had done it to protect innocent people who were being attacked. His communication panel chimed again. This time it was Emperor Thaxmorn himself, ruler of 10,000 worlds and the most powerful being in the known galaxy. Admiral, The Emperor's voice was carefully controlled. "I've been reviewing your reports about these humans. Brief me on the situation." Korthvel gave a complete summary of everything he knew, including the ancient records he'd discovered. The Emperor listened in silence until he finished. "So," the Emperor said finally, "we're dealing with a species that can destroy our ships without being detected, knows our most classified secrets, and has apparently been watching us for decades." "Yes, Your Majesty." "And their demands?" "They want us to stop slavery, halt forced expansion, and grant independence to occupied worlds." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. "Admiral, in your professional opinion, what would happen if we refused?" Korthvel thought about the pirate fleets, about the ancient warnings in the archives, about Captain Chen's calm confidence. "I believe they would make good on their promise, Your Majesty, and I believe we would lose." "A single ship against the entire Imperial fleet?" "Your Majesty, I don't think it is a single ship. I think what we're seeing is just the tip of a very large iceberg." The Emperor sighed, a sound that carried the weight of ruling 10,000 worlds. "Very well, Admiral. Prepare for a formal diplomatic meeting. I will speak with this Captain Chen personally." "Sir, are you certain that's wise?" "Wise or not, it's necessary. If these humans are as powerful as you believe, then this may be the most important conversation in Imperial history." As the communication ended, Korthvel looked out at the city below. Tomorrow, everything might be different. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years was about to discover that it was no longer the most powerful force in the universe. And somehow, that might not be a bad thing. The Grand Assembly Hall on Dominax Prime had never seen anything like this. Representatives from dozens of species sat in the ancient chamber where the Galactic Council met only for the most serious matters. The air was thick with tension and whispered conversations in 100 different languages. Emperor Thaxamorn stood at the center podium, his massive form commanding attention from every being in the room. Around him, the greatest minds in the Empire debated what to do about the human situation. It had been 3 days since Captain Chen's message, and the galaxy was already beginning to change. "The question before us," the Emperor announced, his voice carrying clearly through the hall, "is simple. Do we negotiate with these humans, or do we treat them as a threat to be eliminated?" General Vactus, the Empire's most decorated military commander, stood first. His scarred face showed the results of dozens of battles, and his voice carried the authority of absolute confidence in Imperial power. "Your Majesty," he said, "we cannot allow a single alien ship to dictate terms to the entire Empire. If we show weakness now, every rebel group and pirate fleet in the galaxy will think they can make demands of us." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the military section of the assembly. Many of the older commanders nodded their approval. They had built careers on the idea that the Empire's strength came from never backing down, never showing fear. "What do you propose, General?" the Emperor asked. "Full military response, Your Majesty. Every available ship converges on the human vessel. We destroy it completely, send a message that the Empire will not be threatened." Diplomatic advisor Lixandra rose from her seat, her elegant form moving gracefully as she approached the speaking platform. She was one of the few beings in the Empire who had successfully negotiated with dozens of different species, and her voice carried the weight of experience. "Your Majesty," she said, "with respect to General Vactus, I believe that would be a catastrophic mistake. The reports from our encounters with the humans suggest they possess technology far beyond our understanding. Attacking them might not just fail, it might provoke a response that could destroy the Empire." "You're suggesting we surrender to a single ship?" Vactus demanded. "I'm suggesting we gather more information before we make decisions that could affect trillions of lives." The debate continued for hours, but it was interrupted by urgent reports from across the galaxy. Intelligence officers brought news that changed everything they thought they knew about the situation. "Your Majesty," Intelligence Commander Zelnoth reported, "we've been investigating unusual incidents across Imperial space. What we've found is disturbing." "Explain," the Emperor ordered. "Over the past 6 months, we've had dozens of reports of equipment failures, missing persons, and mysterious accidents involving our worst commanders and most brutal operations. At first, we assumed they were unrelated incidents." Zelnoth activated a holographic display showing a map of the galaxy with hundreds of red dots marking incidents. But when we analyzed the pattern, we found something remarkable. Every incident targeted individuals or operations involved in slavery, genocide, or unnecessary brutality. And in every case, no innocent beings were harmed. The assembly fell silent as the implications became clear. General Kexmar's task force, the one that was destroying Alderani settlements for refusing to pay tribute, they found their ships mysteriously disabled in deep space. No damage, no injuries, just complete power failure. They had to be rescued by a passing merchant vessel. The slave processing station in the Vorth system, all the guards fell into a deep sleep simultaneously. When they woke up, every slave was gone, transported safely to free worlds. The station was undamaged but completely empty. Colonel Hectool's pacification units reported mass hallucinations and equipment failures whenever they tried to attack civilian targets. But when they focused on legitimate military objectives, everything worked perfectly. Emperor Thaxamorn listened to report after report, and a picture began to emerge. The humans hadn't just arrived 3 days ago. They had been working quietly throughout Imperial space for months, systematically dismantling the Empire's worst activities while remaining completely invisible. "How many incidents?" the Emperor asked. "Over 400 confirmed cases, Your Majesty. And now that we know what to look for, we're finding more every day." General Vactus looked stunned. "You're telling me that aliens have been operating freely in Imperial space and we never detected them?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you, General." The Emperor raised his hand for silence. "Commander Zelnoth, in your professional opinion, how long have the humans been observing us? Based on the precision of their operations and their detailed knowledge of our activities, I would estimate at least several years, possibly decades." A chill fell over the assembly. The Empire's greatest strength had always been its intelligence network, its ability to know what was happening throughout the galaxy. The idea that an entire species had been watching them without being detected was terrifying. "Your Majesty," Lixandra said quietly, "there's something else we need to consider. Captain Chen said the Indomitable was an exploration and diplomatic vessel, not a warship." The implications of this statement hit the assembly like a physical blow. If this was what humans could do with a peaceful ship, what could they accomplish with actual warships? But General Vactus was not ready to accept defeat. "Your Majesty, I request permission to test their capabilities. I will personally lead a battle group against the human ship. We need to know what we're really facing." "General," Admiral Korthvel interrupted, "I strongly advise against any hostile action. The ancient records clearly state—" "The ancient records are 500 years old," Vactus shouted. "Technology changes. Empires rise and fall. Just because our ancestors were intimidated by these humans doesn't mean we should be." Emperor Thaxmorn considered the arguments. He was caught between the advice of his military commanders and his diplomatic advisors, between the Empire's traditional strength and the growing evidence that the humans represented something entirely new. "General Vactus," he said finally, "you have permission to conduct a reconnaissance mission, but you will not attack unless directly threatened. Is that understood?" "Perfectly, Your Majesty." As the assembly dispersed, few beings noticed the small group of military hardliners gathering around General Vactus. They spoke in whispers, their words hidden from the official recording devices, but their intentions were clear. They would not let aliens dictate terms to the Empire, no matter what the Emperor commanded. Captain Zethkon received the coded message 3 hours later, while maintaining his position near the human ship. The message was brief and used old military codes that bypassed official channels. Operation Honor Guard authorized. Support General Vactus on arrival. Restore Imperial dignity. Zethkon stared at the message for a long time. He knew what it meant. Vactus was planning to attack the humans regardless of the Emperor's orders. As a loyal officer, he should report the message immediately. But he was also a veteran who understood military pride. The Empire had never backed down from a fight, never shown weakness to aliens. Perhaps Vactus was right. Perhaps it was time to test these humans properly. 20 hours later, General Vactus arrived with a battle group of 50 Imperial warships. They took position in a combat formation around the lone human vessel, which continued to drift peacefully in space, apparently unconcerned by the overwhelming display of force. "Human vessel," Vactus broadcast on all frequencies. "You are surrounded by the Imperial Navy. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Captain Chen's response was broadcast to every ship in the area, her voice as calm as ever. "General, I would advise against any aggressive action. My government has been very clear about our desire for peaceful resolution." "Your government is not here," Vactus replied. "You are alone, outnumbered 50 to 1. This is your last chance to surrender." "General," Chen said sadly, I tried to warn you. What happened next would be remembered as the shortest battle in Imperial history. For exactly 3.7 seconds, the human ship did nothing as 50 Imperial warships opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams, missiles, and plasma cannons struck the Indomitable from every direction. Then it moved. The human ship didn't return fire. It didn't need to. Instead, it did something that defied every law of physics the Empire understood. The ship seemed to exist in multiple places at once, phasing in and out of reality. In the space between one heartbeat and the next, every Imperial weapon system shut down. But that wasn't the most terrifying part. The most terrifying part was that the Imperial ships found themselves gently moved thousands of kilometers away from their target, repositioned into a perfect formation as if by invisible hands. No violence, no destruction, just an overwhelming demonstration that the humans could do whatever they wanted with Imperial technology. "This is Captain Chen." The human's voice reached every ship simultaneously, somehow bypassing all communication systems. "General Vactus, you have just witnessed our defensive capabilities. Your weapons cannot harm us, and your ships exist. At our discretion. I tried to avoid this demonstration, but you forced my hand." General Vactus, his pride shattered and his ships helpless, could only listen as the human continued. "I want you to return to your Emperor with a message." News of General Vactus's humiliation spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every species in the Empire knew that 50 Imperial warships had been effortlessly neutralized by a single human vessel. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's enemies began to believe that freedom might be possible. On slave worlds throughout the galaxy, whispered conversations carried a new word: hope. Species that had been conquered generations ago suddenly remembered what it felt like to dream of independence. The Empire's grip on its territories, built on the fear of overwhelming military power, began to loosen as that power was revealed to be an illusion. Emperor Thaxmorn sat alone in his private chambers, reading reports that painted a picture of an empire in crisis. Rebellion was breaking out on dozens of worlds. Imperial governors were requesting reinforcements that he no longer believed could help. The economy was beginning to suffer as trade routes became unreliable, and local governments stopped following imperial directives. But the most disturbing report came from his intelligence services. They had finally managed to trace some of the mysterious incidents that had been plaguing imperial operations. The truth was worse than anyone had imagined. "Your Majesty," Intelligence Commander Zelnoth reported, "we now have confirmation that the humans have been operating in our space for at least 5 years. They've been systematically documenting our worst activities and quietly sabotaging operations that targeted innocent civilians." "How quietly?" the Emperor asked. "So quietly that until this week, we thought all the incidents were accidents or equipment failures. They never left evidence, never caused unnecessary casualties, never revealed their presence. They were learning about us while keeping us completely unaware of their existence." The Emperor stood and walked to his window, looking out at the vast city below. Dominax Prime was the heart of the Empire, home to trillions of beings from hundreds of species. Many of them were here by choice, drawn by opportunities for trade, education, or advancement. But many others were here because they had no choice. Slaves, refugees, conquered peoples with nowhere else to go. For the first time in his reign, Thaxmorn wondered what kind of legacy he would leave behind. His thoughts were interrupted by an urgent communication from Admiral Korthvel. "Your Majesty, Captain Chen is requesting another meeting. She says it's urgent." "Put her through." The screen activated, and the Emperor found himself face to face with the human who had single-handedly changed the balance of power in the galaxy. She looked smaller than he had expected, more fragile than most species he knew. But her eyes held a quiet strength that made him understand why his military commanders were so afraid of her. "Emperor Thaxmorn," she said with a respectful nod, "thank you for agreeing to speak with me again. Captain Chen, I assume you're calling about General Vactus's demonstration?" "In part, yes. I want you to know that I took no pleasure in that display. We would have preferred to resolve this situation through diplomacy. Yet you were prepared for his attack. We've been monitoring your communications, Your Majesty. We knew what the General was planning. We hoped you would be able to prevent it, but we prepared for the possibility that you couldn't." The casual admission that they had been listening to Imperial communications sent another chill through the Emperor. If the humans could monitor their most secure channels, then there were no secrets left. "What do you want from me, Captain?" he asked directly. "I want to meet with you in person, Your Majesty, face to face without screens or distance between us. There are things that need to be discussed that can't be handled through remote communications. You're asking me to leave the security of my homeworld to meet with an alien whose capabilities I don't understand. I'm asking you to trust me, Your Majesty, and I'm offering to trust you in return. Captain Chen paused, then continued. The meeting can take place on a neutral space station. You can bring as many guards as you like, but I think it's time for honesty between our peoples. The Emperor considered the request. Every advisor would tell him it was too dangerous, that meeting with the humans in person was an unacceptable risk. But he was beginning to understand that the old rules no longer applied. Very well, Captain. Where do you propose we meet? Station Harmony in the neutral zone. It's isolated enough to ensure privacy, but public enough that both of our peoples will know the meeting is taking place. 3 days later, Emperor Thaxmorn arrived at Station Harmony with an escort of his finest ships and most trusted guards. The station was an old trading post that had been neutral territory for centuries, used for diplomatic meetings between various species when formal embassies were impractical. As his shuttle approached the docking bay, the Emperor saw the human ship for the first time with his own eyes. The Indomitable was indeed smaller than his flagship, but there was something about its elegant design that spoke of technology far beyond imperial understanding. It looked more like a work of art than a military vessel. Captain Chen was waiting for him in the station's main conference room. She was accompanied by only 2 other humans, both wearing the same simple blue uniforms. The Emperor had brought a dozen guards and advisors, yet somehow he felt like he was the one at a disadvantage. Your Majesty, Captain Chen said, standing as he entered. Thank you for coming. Up close, the Emperor could see that Chen was indeed physically smaller and more delicate than most beings he knew. But there was something in her posture, her expression, that commanded respect despite her size. Captain Chen, he replied formally. I hope this meeting will be productive. They sat across from each other at a simple table, the fate of the galaxy resting on the conversation between 2 individuals who had never met before. Your Majesty, Chen began, I want you to understand something important. The Terran Federation doesn't want to conquer your empire or rule your people. We have no interest in your territory or your resources. Then what do you want? We want the suffering to stop. We want slavery to end. We want genocide to become a thing of the past. We want the strong to protect the weak, instead of exploiting them. The Emperor leaned back in his chair. You're asking me to dismantle the entire structure of imperial society. I'm asking you to evolve it. Your empire has achieved remarkable things. You've brought different species together, created trade networks that span the galaxy, developed technologies that benefit everyone. But you've also caused immense suffering in the pursuit of power and control. Captain Chen activated a small device and the room filled with holographic images. They showed imperial slave markets, destroyed cities, refugee camps filled with beings who had lost everything to imperial expansion. This is what we've been documenting, she said quietly. This is why we can't simply ignore what's happening here. The Emperor stared at the images. He had seen similar reports throughout his reign, but always as statistics and official summaries. Seeing the actual faces, the real suffering, made it harder to dismiss as necessary costs of maintaining order. What you're showing me, he said slowly, represents the actions of individuals, not imperial policy. With respect, Your Majesty, imperial policy allows and encourages these actions. Your military commanders are rewarded for aggressive expansion. Your governors profit from slave labor. Your economic system depends on exploiting conquered worlds. The conversation continued for hours. Captain Chen presented evidence of imperial activities that the Emperor had never seen, stories of suffering that had never reached his attention. In return, the Emperor explained the challenges of governing thousands of different worlds and species, the constant threat of chaos and rebellion that required strong responses. I understand your situation, Your Majesty, Chen said finally, but understanding doesn't equal acceptance. The question now is what happens next. You said you would take direct action if we refuse to change. Yes, and I want you to understand what that means. Captain Chen activated her device again, and new images appeared. They showed the 3 pirate fleets that had been destroyed, but now the Emperor could see the precision of the attack. Ships had been disintegrated down to the molecular level, leaving only enough debris to prove what had happened. This was us being merciful, Your Majesty. We gave the pirates multiple warnings, allowed them to evacuate their crews to escape pods before destroying their ships. But if we're forced to act against targets that won't surrender, she didn't need to finish the sentence. The implication was clear. The humans could destroy Imperial fleets as easily as they had destroyed the pirates, and the Empire's millions of ships would be no more effective than Vactus's 50 warships had been. So our choice is surrender or destruction, the Emperor said. No, Your Majesty. Your choice is cooperation or replacement. Replacement? If the Empire can't reform itself, then we'll help the galaxy create something better. There are hundreds of species that would jump at the chance to build a more just civilization. The question is whether the Empire wants to be part of that future or be swept aside by it. The Emperor was quiet for a long time, processing everything he had learned. Finally he spoke. Captain, if I agreed to the changes you want, how would I maintain control? How would I prevent chaos and rebellion? The same way any good leader does, Your Majesty,